What is up, everybody? Welcome to the MMA Engine and welcome to Propability for UFC 287. Israel Adesanya, Alex Pereira 2. We have a 13-fight card to talk about, some props to talk about. Really looking forward to it. WEEZY, what is up? You looking forward to the return and a really good card here in UFC 287?
Yeah, such a fun card, especially the pay-per-view version of this card is going to be filled from top to bottom with really interesting, really great high-level fights. And then on the undercard, we've got some very interesting fights on this one as well. A couple of women's fights. We got Joe Bodybags Pifer making his debut. Well, not debut. It's just that the last one was against Alan Amadovsky. He was not quite UFC level, but now he's fighting Gerald Meerschaert. This is a real UFC test for him. Really looking forward to see how Bodybags takes this step up in competition. We got some really fun fights. So, yeah, looking forward to break them down with you in the chat. Let's get it going, man, here. We got UFC 287. We got to find ways to stack cash tickets like flapjacks because these money lines are juiced to the tits. So we got to find some value in these props, Brady. Let's get it.
Yeah, we're sitting here 6:40 on a Monday after a week off, and I only have one bet. I mean, this is not like me, and it's only a half a unit as well. So hopefully after the show, maybe more spots stick out. But yeah, it might be slim pickings this week. But yeah, maybe some of this sticks out here. Before we get into it, guys, if you guys can please leave a like on the video, subscribe here to the MMA Engine. Me and WEEZY do go live every Monday for some probability. One of my favorite shows, if not my favorite show to do of the week, just because I love betting props, I love betting over unders, and that's where we talk about all that on this show here. So shout out to Propaholic, I see you in the building. We got Grateful Dude, our guy Lou Betcha. Can't wait to be going live with Lou later. That'd be fun. And then we got Daz as well. What is up, everybody? All right, I say we get into it then. All right, so this is my only bet of the card, and it's on a strawweight under, believe it or not. The first fight of the night, we have Jacqueline Amari going against Sam Hughes. The over-under is set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 is -125. The under 2.5 is -105. Apparently, this opened up plus 275, March 27th, and that was open for only 2 minutes. 2 minutes. So if you got on that, good for you. Went to plus 177. Just been smashed ever since. I finally hopped on at plus 100 last night. Even missed a plus 115 on DraftKings. Missed a plus 105. Like, okay, I got to hop on now before it goes to minus money. But yeah, I'm a pretty big believer in Amari. She's a second-degree black belt. Very, very good grappler here. And I think if she gets this fight down to the mat, it's probably over shortly after. The reason I do like that under 2.5 and even like the under 1.5 could be interesting. It's because Amarim's never seen the second round, let alone the third round, right? And it's because she's a very, very good grappler. Like if she gets the fight down to the mat, I think she could finish here. And if not, Sam Hughes could potentially get a finisher in her own right. So I think the under is the way to go. I know it's crazy to say for a freaking strawweight fight, but I just think Amarim's different. 6 fights, 6 finishes on the first round. We never see that ever from a strawweight. So I'm on the under here, and it's my only bet of the night, WEEZY. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, and as you can see, Brady bet the under 2.5 at around plus 100. Probably one of the worst bets I've ever seen according to the prop templates. Okay, yes. And see, here's the problem with the data, because we have no UFC data on Jacqueline Amari, so it just reads 0 out of 0. And if you look at Sam Hughes, she's been under 2.5 rounds only one time, and that was her debut against Tisha Torres, and she took that fight on short notice. But the problem is that Jacqueline Amari has a skill set that we haven't really seen Sam Hughes match up against yet at the UFC level. And if you go down here to the very bottom of the screen, we're going to see that Jacqueline Amari in 3-round fights has finished under 2.5 rounds 4 out of 4 times, and it's 4 out of 5 times for Sam Hughes, and they're outside the UFC competition. So 8 of their 9 fights, have finished under 2.5 rounds. But if we look at the prop template, we can see that we're paying 51.22% for the under 2.5 at -105, but only 28.26% of women's strawweight fights, and that's the entire sample size of UFC strawweight fights that are scheduled for 3 rounds, have went under 2.5 rounds. So we are overpaying a lot for this bet, but we're getting a fighter in Amari who's got a really, really dangerous submission game. And because it's her UFC debut, and we've never seen her outside of the first round, it's legitimate to say there's a potential for a massive adrenaline dump. We've seen Sam Hughes actually get better as the fight goes on. She's got really good conditioning. She's got really good pace and pressure, especially in the second and the third rounds, where if Amari maybe gasses herself out trying to get the finish in the first, we could see Sam Hughes get a finish in the second or the third round potentially as well. So I like the under 2.5 as well, but we can see over here at minus 125 for the over 2.5, Brady. It's a trifecta bet, and we've got six fight sample size for Sam Hughes here. So, if you're looking at the stylistic read, Brady, it's screaming under because of the way that Jacqueline Amari fights and because of her skill set. And because if you look at Sam Hughes's competition inside the UFC, let's go here to the advanced stats, Brady, which I have up. And Sam Hughes has fought Piera Rodriguez, not a submission threat. Elise Reed never even attempted a submission in her martial arts career. Estela Nunez, pure striker. Luana Pinheiro, powerful striker, judo player, not really a submission threat. Loma Lukbunmi, Muay Thai striker. Tisha Torres, all-around fighter. But yeah, she's never fought a submission grappler except for Vanessa Demopoulos here. Outside the UFC, that was one fight where she did get submitted. And that was by a reverse triangle. So we have seen her get submitted before. It's happened. And with Amarim, she's got a really good ground game. So I like the under 2.5 here at minus 105. We just got to be careful, Brady, because the data is screaming no. But we know how important it is when a fighter's a killer be killed fighter and never been out of the first round, that you don't stand in the way of that and bet overs.
Yeah, I mean, Lou said it right here. Brady was looking at some data on Amarim last night, and that I did a very deep dive into the data last night on Amarim, and after doing that, I am sold. I do think she wins this fight. If you're on the Amarim side, you got to like the under at a much better price. If you're on the Hughes side, maybe the money line or the over, but yeah, Hughes might be able to get a late finisher in her own right. But I'm more so of the opinion of Amarim. Once this fight hits the mat, I think it'll be over shortly after. Like, her ground game is no joke whatsoever. Second degree black belt, like, no joke of a ground game. It's just, can't she get it there? And the 47% takedown defense of Sam Hughes leads me to believe that probably.
Yep. That 47% takedown defense against a second degree Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and multiple time IBJJF champion. That's a bad recipe. So I'm looking for this under to hit.
Let's go. I didn't go crazy on it because, like you said, it's not something you want to go crazy on. It's a freaking strawweight under, but I think stylistically makes sense. All right, we'll move on to the next fight. We have Shalian Nurdenbeke going against Steve Garcia. We got the over-under set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 is plus 120. The under 2.5 is minus 150. And it opened up at plus 120, was sitting at plus 145. I didn't even look into the fight yet. I would have bet that absolutely, but missed it. It got smashed to minus 145, and it's now minus 150, and it's been around minus 145, minus 150 for a while now. So yeah, if you got in on that plus money under, you did your job. I think that's a phenomenal bet. Where it's at now, I don't have a ton of interest, but I think this fight probably finishes more often than not. But the minus 150, I'm not in love with. But what are you seeing here, WEEZY?
Yeah, I see a guy in Garcia where let's first take a look at the stats. And if we go to the matchup stats here for Steve Garcia, you're going to see a guy who's landed 91 significant strikes and is getting a knockdown on 3.3% of the significant strikes that he lands. And he's getting knocked down on 7.8% of the significant strikes that he absorbs. So we've seen 3 of Steve Garcia's 4 UFC fights finish inside the distance. But the one time that it didn't was when he was in a grappling heavy contest with Luis Pena, where he was controlled for over 14 minutes out of the 15 minutes of that fight. So stylistically, we kind of see a clash of styles here, don't we? We see kind of like a wild man striker who's, in there just swinging bombs, and either he lands or the opponent lands, but somebody's going to get served. Somebody's going to wind up looking up at the lights wondering what the hell happened. But with Shah Yalan, you've got a guy who's done a really good job of winning minutes in the wrestling exchanges and keeping fights on the ground where he does his best work and where he can kind of keep safe from being finished. And Steve Garcia, not too much of a submission threat on the ground. He's way more of a knockout threat on the feet. So it's kind of a clash of styles. The fight doesn't go to decision at minus 200 is overpriced by 23% according to the benchmark. So you've got to have a lot of faith if you're betting the unders in this fight that it's going to be a Steve Garcia setting the pace in this fight. Because if it's Shah Yalan who's setting the pace in this fight, Brady, I think we're looking pretty good here for a plus 160 fight goes to decision. It's a fat plus money number. That 38% implied probability of the line is underpriced by 18% when we compare it to the 56% fight goes to decision rate for 3-round fights in the featherweight division. In addition to that, we've had 50% of their fights, 4 of 8 combined, that have seen the scorecards at the UFC level. So that's an 11.54% break. And then we're overpaying by about 6.46% because about 56% of fights do go to decision. These guys only go to decision at about 50% of the time. So, yeah, but 2 out of the 3 metrics really do like the pricing of the fight goes to decision at plus 160. And here's the other thing, too. I don't really see a lot of late finishing equity for either one of these guys. The last 2.5 minutes, the last round, I kind of feel like it's going to be Steve Garcia setting the pace early. And if that happens, somebody's going to get finished in that first round. Or if it gets past the first round, I see a high likelihood of it going to decision because Garcia is more of a front-loaded knockout artist. So I do like the fight goes to decision as my favorite bet for this fight because the benchmarks say that we're getting it at a cheaper price, and the 8-fight sample size, which is a decent sample size, is saying that we're underpaying for it, Brady. And I also believe that it's probably going to be Shah Yalan that's going to be more likely to set the pace of how this fight takes place because of his wrestling heavy style.
Yep, I have the same read. I'm picking Charlie on by decision. I would have bet that under at plus money. Like that's a big difference though. The under 2.5 at plus 145. That is a 40.8% implied probability, and now it's minus 150. That's a 60% implied probability. Like that's about a 20% difference there. So I would have liked it at plus 145, but now at minus 150, I don't like that violence. And if anything, it probably would be that over. But I don't know. It probably you're right. It probably would be sketchy early on. Like Steve Garcia fights like a complete wild man, but as the fight goes on, I do think it'll get less and less dangerous. I don't know if I'll get to it though. What are your thoughts on like the over 1.5 at round like minus 160? Is he
minus 160 for the over 1.5 is 11.66% underpriced, but it's overpriced because still half of those fights have went over 1.5 rounds. So half of went to decision, half of went over 2.5, and half of went over 1.5. So it's kind of telling us that these guys are pretty front loaded with their finishing. So why not, take those over 2.5s where the fight goes to get a better price. And then if it does go past the first round, maybe that's when you feel like that fight goes to decision bet becomes a lot safer. But I'd rather get the bigger plus money because it does seem like these guys, when they do finish fights, it is early.
Yep, makes sense to me. All right, we'll move on to the next fight. We have Ignacio Bajamonas going against Trey Ogden. We have the over-under. It just got released pretty recently. So the over-under is sitting at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 minus 125. The under 2.5 minus 105. The fight goes decision plus 105. The fight doesn't go to decision minus 130. I don't have a great read on whether this fight finishes or not. I really like Bajamonas in this fight, though. But I could see Bajamonas winning by decision, just picking apart Ogden across 3 rounds. I could potentially see a knockout, but Ogden's never been knocked out. Maybe even a sub. Ogden's been subbed several times. I guess I would lean mostly towards decision, but I don't know. I can see this fight playing out a lot of different ways. Anything sticking out here, WEEZY?
Nothing's really sticking out, and here's why, Brady. We've only got a 5-fight sample size for these two guys at the UFC level. And, I think that this fight, it looks almost identical to Zellhuber versus Ogden, right? I mean, like, you could draw a lot of comparisons between Ignacio Bajamonas and Daniel Zellhuber with their fight style. That fight went all the way to decision. The fight goes to decision, as we see in this highlighted row, Brady, here, is plus 105. That's a 48.78% implied probability. We see that 49.67% of lightweight fights scheduled for 3 rounds since the year 2013 have went to decision. So we're underpaying by about 0.89% there. And at a 60% fight goes to decision rate for these two guys at the UFC level, we're getting an 11% break and a 10% break. So it's a trifecta bet, but it's not the kind of trifecta bet we go running to the window for, Brady, because it's a 5-fight sample size. And if Ignacio pushes the pace, more than Zellhuber did against Ogden, we could see Ignacio get a late knockout. If Ignacio is careless about trying to close distance, about rushing in too fast, and Ogden takes him down and starts attempting submissions, we could see Trey Ogden get a win by submission. So, yeah, man, this is one that the data really isn't much help. These guys show to be finishers on the regional scene, as we see here. 10 of 13 of Bajamonas' fights on the regional scene that were scheduled for 3 rounds have finished inside the distance. It's 11 of 16 for Ogden, so that's 72.41%. But you always have to look and see what the difference is between the regional scene finish rate and the UFC finish rate. And we see here in a 5-fight sample size, it goes down by 32.41%. They're really only finishing at 40% up here. So we can't really be confident about their ability to finish fights at this level. So I kind of feel like fight goes to decision at plus 105, over 2.5 at minus 125 are probably the best ways to play this fight. But, I'm not running to the window for this particular fight because it's a smaller sample size. And Ignacio Bahamondes in particular, still very young, still rounding out his game, still getting better. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, nothing I'm running to the window for as well. I thought a sneaky prop might be like Bahamonas by sub. But no, it's only plus 600, which is wild because Ogden's a black belt. But just because Ogden has been subbed like a ton throughout his career. But that's only plus 600. So yeah, fight goes probably is where I look, but I'm with you. I'm not running to the window for it.
Yep, me neither, man. I'm not doing it. There's just not enough data for the data to be our guide here. And stylistically, it feels like an over because of the way that Ogden fights. But I don't know, man. The over is what the data likes. I'm going to probably be staying away.
Yep, I feel that. We'll move on to the next fight. We have another strawweight fight. We have Cynthia Calvillo going against Lupita Godinez. We have the over-under set at 2.5 rounds. This is probably one of the most juiced overs on the card. We have the over 2.5 minus 325, the under 2.5 plus 250. The fight goes to decision minus 300. The fight doesn't get decision plus 240. So somebody's honking their horn out there. Very juiced overs here, WEEZY. What is sticking out in this one?
Yeah, what's sticking out here is some stylistic stuff and some narrative stuff. We got Cynthia Calvillo, who's been fighting at 125 pounds. Here, let me show you guys here. We'll bring up Calvillo's fight history. We could see here, Nina Nunez, 125. Andrea Lee, 125. Jessica Andrade, 125. Chukagian, 125. Jessica I was a catchweight at 127 because I believe that Calvillo missed weight. And then after that, she was a 115-pounder. And 3 of her 7 fights at strawweight wound up being catchweight fights. 121 pounds for the Marina Rodriguez fight, 118 pounds for the Battaglia fight, 118 pounds for the Joanne Calderwood fight. So we've had 6 fights. Yes, 7 fights for Cynthia Calvillo at 115. She missed weight in 3 of the 7 fights, was forced to go up to 125. And then at 125, she even missed weight once. Now, here she is at the age of 35 years, 8 months, almost, 9 months. She's going to be cutting back down to 115 pounds. So I like the unders here, you guys. Almost everything here on the underside is a small trifecta bet. Nothing to get too excited about, but 1.14% underpriced here according to the benchmark. 1.96 here. 2.17 here on the under 1.5. 0.31% on the under 2.5, 2.33%. And then we see, a 5 and 3 here. A 0 and a 1 here, a 3 and a 1 here, a 4 and a 2 here, an 8 and a 7 here. So the data does like these big plus money numbers, plus 550 for fight doesn't start round 2, plus 300 for fight doesn't start round 3, plus 400 for under 1.5. And look, this line, Brady, is calling Cynthia Calvillo a washed up bum. Because let's face it, let's just not mince words here.
Okay.
If you're plus 240 to a woman that just shit the bed against Angela Hill as a minus 300 favorite, they're calling you a bum. And she might very well be. She might have a miserable weight cut and not even come close to making 115. If any of those things happen, Loopy might be able to go out there and starch this hoe, like right away, potentially. So if Cynthia Calvillo is indeed a bum at this point, which is what the bookmakers are calling her, it's what the bettors are calling her, and it's what these violence lines are calling her, we could cash a big plus money ticket, plus 250 on that under 2.5. And any of these bets doesn't start round 2, doesn't start round 3, under 1.5, fight doesn't go to decision. They're all small trifecta bets on the prop template here. So I think that's where the data is telling us to go. And stylistically, if we see that Cynthia Calvillo had a miserable weight cut, and there's a very high probability of that, in my opinion, it might be a good look here to be on those big plus money unders here.
Yeah, and I might even wait for like the weigh-ins to see how she looks, because I don't think anybody's gonna be rushing to the end to bet these violence numbers in general. So yeah, I'll wait for the weigh-ins. Maybe Calvillo misses weight. Maybe she looks like crap. So I'm gonna wait for the weigh-ins on that. But yeah, that's juicy. It's a trifecta as well, which is wild for a strawweight fight. But hey, maybe I bet 2 strawweight unders on this card and call it a day.
That's how you know it's a wild card, man, right?
Yeah, yes, sir. I like it. Yeah, so I'm going to wait for weigh-ins on that, and I think it's a good call. Calvillo, I want to see how she looks. All right, we will keep moving on then. We have Carl Williams stepping in on short notice, taking on Chase Sherman. We have props on this one, right? So yeah,
I've got someone here on the template.
Okay, I see him. We have the over/under set at 1.5 rounds. So the over 1.5 opened up at minus 160, something like that. It's now minus 265. So we just got completely smashed. Yeah. The under 1.5 is plus 205. The fight goes decision plus 120. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 150 now. I think money's going to continue to come in on this this fight goes to decision here, and I'm going to be looking at violence, but I'm not sure what BetOnline's doing here. Opening up the fight doesn't go at minus 180. I think that's going to keep coming down throughout the week. Just because Carl Williams is not a finisher whatsoever, but this is a matchup where I feel like Chase Sherman's ground game is so bad that, if Jake Collier can submit you, I think Williams is going to be able to get him out of there at some point. But at this point, I have no interest. I'm just waiting for money to come in on these fight goes to decision numbers. So yeah, right now on BetOnline, WEEZY, the fight doesn't go is now minus 150. And that over and that fight goes is now plus 120. So yeah, money's coming in on these non-violence numbers, and as expected in a Carl Williams fight who doesn't really finish anybody.
Yeah, man, but look, you get finished by Fat Collier on the ground, and then certainly Carl Williams can finish you on the ground. The plain and simple. I mean, like, this is I like Carl Williams a lot in this spot, obviously. I max bet him the last time out against Bresky at minus 200, and I missed that line by a mile, and I still max bet him. So, I really do think that Williams is going to get the job done here, but Man, how fat is that plus 205 looking, Brady, for the under 1.5? Is that where it's at still? Is that where the Bet Online has it still?
Plus 205 for the under 1.5.
Damn, man, that's plus that, plus 205 is a 33, just under a 33% implied probability. Dude, if Carl Williams gets this guy down and gets in a dominant position, he can absolutely finish with ground and pound.
Exactly.
He had Bresky in some bad spots. And let's not forget, dude, this is actually a pretty important point. Chase Sherman was training for Fat Barnett.
Yeah.
So I mean, he wasn't training takedown defense. He wasn't training any of that shit. And now, a week out from the fight, you're getting Carl Williams, a guy who's probably going to, like break the heavyweight takedown record at some point in his career. I'm not even joking about that. This guy is going to be racking up takedowns in every single fight, especially if he keeps getting opponents like Chase Sherman. So, yeah, I see why the overs are getting juiced here, but you're overpaying a lot according to the benchmarks. And man, under 1.5 at plus 205, Brady, I'm writing that down, and I'm probably betting that. And I'm going to be rooting for Williams to go out there and starch this hole with ground and pound late in the first round, man. I'm going to be just frothing at the mouth looking for it.
No, I mean, me too. If Williams doesn't finish this fight, he'll probably never finish anybody the rest of his career. I mean, Chase Sherman has the worst ground game in the heavyweight division by a mile. So yeah, he should go out there, get on top, get in the mount, and pound away. Like Chase Sherman has no idea what to do off his back. So yeah, I'll be betting violence in some type of fashion. Under 2.5 plus 205. I'm curious to see where the under 2.5 is. Even if that's at plus money, I'll probably take a look at that. But I'm going to go against the narrative in a way. Williams not a finisher, but man, he should probably finish Chase Sherman here. And on the flip side, if Chase Sherman wins this fight, it's probably going to be by knockout. He's not winning a decision against Carl Williams. I'd be shocked if he did. So, yep, violence for me, but I have a feeling more money is going to keep coming in on these non-violence numbers just because it is a Carl Williams fight. But yeah, he should be able to finish Chase Sherman. I mean, I'm not sure why Chase Sherman accepted this fight, to be honest.
Yeah, and just interesting little side note here, Brady. Carl Williams fights have finished inside the distance 3 of 7 times outside the UFC when they've been scheduled for 3 rounds. But guess what? All 3 of those finishes in the very first round.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So there you go, man. If he does get this takedown, if he does get a dominant position when he's still fresh, and don't forget, he's taking this fight on short notice.
Yeah.
So, he potentially Williams might not be quite ready to wrestle for 3 rounds. And Chase Sherman's a big dude, So I think that under 1.5 at plus 205 is such a great way to play this.
Yep, I'm writing that one down. And by the way, Propaholic saying that Usman versus Shavkat Rakhmonov is in the works. And I saw it on Twitter that fight is potentially in the works here. What a fight that would be.
Oh, man, am I excited. And then you showed me that awesome picture of Shavkat on that chair that looks like he's like an emperor of like some foreign land. He looks such a dude, Usman Shavkat, what a great fight for the fans that's going to be. We finally really get to find out where Shavkat is in his all-around game, and Kamaru Usman the old lion trying to beat the up-and-coming young prospect. What a great fight.
I'm going to make a petition for Shavkat Rakhmonov to change his Tapology picture to this, because it would be the best Tapology picture ever. Are those real wolves next to him?
It looks like real wolves, dude. And what I mean? Like, he's from Kazakhstan, I mean, like, there's wolves out there.
Awesome.
So
yeah, there is.
That hat that he's got on his head, he said that he trained a falcon to kill the animal, that he wound up, skinning it and making a hat out of the animal that he trained his bird to kill. I mean, like, dude, it's crazy shit. This guy Shavkat, he's already a legend, and he's only got like 5 UFC fights.
Dude's a beast, man. That Neil performance was great. I know he's a big favorite, but I was really impressed with that Neil performance.
Yeah.
So hopefully the Usman fight happens.
Let's hope, man. That would be such a baller fight.
And then Mushroom said he ate the Falcon. My goodness, what a
Holy
savage.
shit, that's a baller move too. The legend of Shavkat just grows.
I love it. And I love this next fight. We have Gerald Meerschaert versus Joe Pifer. We have the over-under set at 1.5 rounds, and this under 1.5 is juiced to -135. So the fight goes to decision plus 250. The fight doesn't go to decision is -325, which is much better on, I think on 5 dimes they had it like -500. On Betway, they have -450. So yeah, Bet Online giving a pretty
-500, Brady. So what did you say? You had -325 for the fight doesn't go?
Yep, -325 here.
Okay, and what does the fight goes at then?
250.
250.
Yep.
Okay,
So much better line than -500, I'd say, for some violence. But still, of course, pretty overpriced. Something I'm not too interested in. Maybe like a parlay piece, but yeah, I think this fight finishes one way or another. Meerschaert is a killer be killed fighter, like a 93% finish rate. Been finished a ton in his career. Pifer, just a ton of power in his hands. I think this fight does finish more often than not, but not much you can do with a -325 or -500 as well.
Yeah, it's hard to do anything with that except for maybe parlay it. And even if you're parlaying it, the data kind of needs to bless it,
Yeah.
because you just don't want to be in the habit of throwing those -300s into parlays when you're overpaying for it, because you can find -300 lines that are underpriced. And let's look at this one, right? -325 signifies a 76.47% implied probability, but with Gerald Meerschaert in a 17 fight sample size in the middleweight division, fights that are scheduled for 3 rounds, 14 of 17 are finishing inside the distance. That's over 80%. And Pifer, it's 1 of 1. So we got an 83.33% finish rate. That's 6.86% better than the 76.47% implied probability of the line. And it's 26% better than the fight doesn't go to decision benchmark for the division, which is 57.29%. So even at -325, Brady, that's not a bad look. That's a bettable line. It's a parlayable line. Now, do you see an under 2.5?
I can tell you right now. So they have the under 2.5. I see a -350. I see a -300, and then I see a -325. But looks like the one available for me at least would be Bovada -325.
-325. So that's the same as the fight doesn't go to decision. So obviously we would just take the fight doesn't go to decision there.
Yeah.
To get the better look, to get the extra 2.5 minutes. But yeah, I mean, for the data that we have here, Brady, it is definitely blessing these the fight doesn't go, the under 2.5, but the best one that we have is the fight doesn't go to decision, because I wouldn't even want the under 2.5, because so many of Meerschaert's fights have finished in round 3 that I don't want to dick around. I want all 5 minutes of that third round if I'm betting violence here, with as many late finishes as Gerald has. So, yeah, I mean, -325, it's a parlayable line, but, both of these guys are pretty damn good too. And, even outside the UFC, in 40 combined fights, 90% of them have finished inside the distance. So they're finishing fights in a big sample size outside the UFC almost as good, or a little bit better than they are inside the UFC. So they're showing that they can finish, not just on the regional scene, but up here at this level as well. And, we've seen Meerschaert get knocked out a few times, and Pifer has serious power. And I mean, I believe that Gerald Meerschaert, given the right situation, can submit just about anybody in this division. So yeah, -325, fight doesn't go to decision, probably the best way to play this one. Am I running to the window to parlay it? I'm really not.
Yeah, like I said, could be a potential parlay piece at -325. Like that's the best price out there. Looks like by a mile. Like 5 dimes -500. Looks like Bovada has it -350, but Betway -450. So, yep, parlay piece if anything for that one. All right, let's move on to the next fight. We have a third women's strawweight fight. We have Michelle Watterson Gomez going against Luana Pinheiro. We have the over under is set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 is minus 350. The under 2.5 is plus 240. The fight goes to decision plus 275. The fight doesn't go to decision is plus 200. What is sticking out on this one here?
So the prop template does like these unders. We see a lot more green here for the Waterson Pinheiro fight. Fight doesn't go to decision at minus or at plus 225. Very interesting because 3 of 8 of Waterson's fights have finished inside the distance, 1 of 2 for Pinheiro. So that's a 40% finish rate for these ladies at the UFC level, but we're only paying 30% for the fight doesn't go. So we're getting about a 10% break there in terms of price. I like that a lot because we're also getting a 1% break when we compare this implied probability of the plus 225 to the benchmark for the division, which is almost 32%. So this is a very small trifecta bet, but yeah, this one here, fight doesn't go to decision, and this one here at plus 330 for fight doesn't start round 2. We're getting a 3.7% break here, while the under 2.5 is negative 0.3% according to the benchmark, and the fight doesn't go is 1% according to the benchmark. And we're also getting some decent numbers here too, as we've got 3 of their 10 fights have finished in the first or second round, compared to 23% for the implied probability of the line. And if you watch Luana Pinheiro fight, Brady, conditioning isn't really there in the second and third rounds. And that's because she's so explosive with her judo takedowns and because she's so explosive with her blast combos when she'll bring her feet with her coming forward, basically running towards her opponent, throwing piston-like punches while she runs, just looking to land a big shot and get her opponent backing up. So Pinheiro's got power on the feet. She can dump you on your head with her judo, and her conditioning doesn't push a pace late into fights. So if she winds up trying to get Waterson out of there early and fails, we could see Waterson take over down the stretch and potentially get a late finish of her own. Bootsy likes Waterson here as an underdog. I also like her wrestling upside to be able to win some minutes potentially here. So I kind of like an under 2.5 of plus 250. And I also kind of like Michelle Waterson Gomez by decision and in the plus 200 range, Brady, because, I think that while Pinheiro probably wins the first round of this fight, I could see Gomez winning the second and third with minutes and volume and superior conditioning. And that traditional martial arts style allows her to strike from a distance, and it might be difficult for Luana to close that distance.
And those Michelle Waterson Gomez fight doesn't goes outside the UFC. Those are crazy. And that's,
I know, right? 11
I thought that was off, but it's actually true. Like, she's only had like 1 or 2 fights outside the UFC go the distance. Everything else is a finish. It's wild.
Yeah, so I mean, we see that they have a 40% finish rate in fights that are scheduled for 3 rounds at the UFC level. But outside the UFC, when you combine their 21 fights, 18 of them have finished inside the distance. So even though there's a big divergence between the 85.71% finish rate outside the UFC to the only 40% finish rate inside the UFC, we're also getting such a discount on the line that you might as well take the plus money side here, because if you wind up parlaying that minus 330 or that minus 325 for the over 2.5 or the fight goes, and and Pinheiro does show that power early in the fight, or Waterson Gomez shows that tricky little submission game that she has later on in the fight, if Luana gasses, your butthole is going to be puckering up tight.
Yeah, it will for sure. But yeah, I don't know if I'll touch this one, but yeah, another juicy strawweight prop. We have like 3 of them on this card that I have some interest in, so that's kind of wild. But it's the card we are on this week. We'll move on to the next fight, and we have the feature prelim. We have Kelvin Gastelum going against Chris Curtis. The over/under set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 minus 220. The under 2.5 plus 180. The fight goes to decision minus 200. The fight doesn't go to decision plus 160. For me, this feels a lot like the Vettori Dolidze fight where both guys are just next level durable. I think this is an over. Chris Curtis, 39 fights, only been knocked out once. Kelvin Gastelum has never been knocked out. This guy has a next level chin. I think this fight is competitive. I think it goes to decision, and I'd be looking at the fight goes or the overs, if anything, in this one. WEEZY, what is sticking out to you?
Well, we can see that the books here are shading. You can see all this green over here for the violence betting line. So they're trying to shade you towards that violence side, and they're giving you some pretty fat plus money numbers here. 41.67% implied probability of the fight not going to decision, but 49.93% of these fights do finish inside the distance in the welterweight division. So that's a break. And we also see that 47% of these guys combined fights have finished inside the distance at the UFC level. So that's better too. And we're only overpaying by 2.56% here when we compare this to this. But boy, which one of these guys is getting the knockout? Because both of these guys are, they're both next level durable. I mean, I could see maybe one of these guys getting a submission because you're really not knocking either one of these guys out. They don't let you bring the shovel into the cage anymore. They don't let you put the stinger on the gloves. So I really don't see either one of these guys getting finished. We've just seen too big of a sample size of fights to let us know that, unless you're subbing Kelvin Gastelum, you're not getting him out of there. Unless you're fighting Chris Curtis for the second time in the same night, you're probably not knocking him out. And this is only a 3-round fight. So the over 2.5 at minus 220 stylistically is something that I just love because I know I can count on the durability of Chris Curtis, and I know I can count on the durability of Kelvin Gastelum. Plain and simple. Those are two things that mean so much more to me in this matchup than what the data means, because I know I can count on these guys. Now, nothing's foolproof, obviously, but I thought we would pay a little bit more than over like 14% to get these overs here, but we're not. It's not overpriced by too much, Brady. So I've already parlayed this. I have the minus 220 over 2.5 parlayed with the Carl Williams money line at minus 410 to get me a minus 125 parlay for 1.25 units.
Yep, sounds good to me. And I might be parlaying that up as well if I could find something else I like. But yep, I'm right there with you. I think both these guys are next level durable, and a finish would really kind of surprise me either way.
Absolutely. I agree there, man. I mean, if one of these guys got a finish, I would be very shocked, and I'll probably be throwing shit at the screen.
Yes, for sure. All right, we'll move on to this fire main card. We have Rosas Jr. going against Christian Rodriguez. We have the over-under set at, it looks like 1.5 rounds on BetOnline. The over 1.5 minus 205. The under 1.5 plus 165. The fight goes to decision plus 140. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 170. WEEZY, what is sticking out on this one here?
Yeah, so they're definitely shading these violence lines to be a little bit more expensive than the non-violence lines. If we compare these lines to the benchmark, we see that we're overpriced by like 6.5% to about 12% here, while we're underpriced here about 5% to about 0%. So they're pushing us towards the non-violence betting lines here. Raul Rosas, El Mariachi Loco, as he used to be known. Now he's El Nino Problema, but he's finished 4 of his 6 fights in round 1. Christian Rodriguez, it's 4 of his 7 in round 1. And then if you look at round 2, outside the UFC, about 77% of their 13 fights are finishing inside of round 3. And up here at the UFC level, it's 2 out of 3. But the problem is that Christian Rodriguez wasn't finished by Jonathan Pierce on short notice, up a weight class. Look, if Jonathan Pierce goes out there and beats Bryce Mitchell in like 3 weeks, he's going to be top 10 in the division. Okay? So if you're not getting finished by a top 10 featherweight on short notice, I'm not sure if Raul Rosas Jr. is finishing you. And Christian Rodriguez has got a really tricky submission game in his own right. Beautiful Darce choke that he locked up against Weems after Weems took him down. we've seen him almost submit Jonathan Pierce with a guillotine 2 different times in that fight. And, like they were right next to the booth, and Cormier was like, man, you could hear Jonathan Pierce gurgling right now, and I mean, Pierce, he'll take a nap before he taps. So I think that, this is a very interesting fight because I'm not willing to bet these overs. I mean, you see all the red here on the right side of the screen, and that's because these guys are violent outside of the UFC. Rosas has got such a nasty submission game. He pressures so hard. He really doesn't let you breathe. So, this is going to be a war one way or another, and there's going to be a ton of grappling in this fight. But is anything sticking out for you, Brady? Because the data's leaning us towards violence, and the violence bets aren't particularly overpriced. But like I say, man, Rosas is a pretty big favorite here. The bookies are telling you that he wins 7 out of 10 times. Now, if that's the case, how does he finish a guy that Jonathan Pierce can't finish?
The only thing I was really looking at was the fight to end by submission at plus 130, because I think this fight does play out on the mat quite a bit, and there's just going to be so many freaking opportunities on either side for a sub. So that's the only way I was looking at it, plus 130 for the fight to end by sub. But outside of that, nothing really sticking out. It looks like BetOnline really overpriced this fight as a good decision compared to other books. Like on Betway, it's minus 120. On 5Dimes, it's minus 135. On DraftKings, I saw the under 2.5 at like minus 115, something like that. So I'd be more so interested in that, but BetOnline just has the worst price out there for this fight in particular.
Yeah, dude. And I mean, like, even fight ends by submission, I would agree that it's way more likely to end by submission. But when I look at that Jay Leno chin that Raul Rosas has, you got to wonder if Rodriguez puts that left hand or that right hand on that giant fucking chin of his, you could. It's like throwing a hot dog down a hallway. It'll be real easy to hit. So I don't know. We're gonna have to really see nobody's really tested Rojas on the feet yet because he's so good at getting the fight to the ground. So yeah, man, this is one of those fights that as much as I want to bet it, as interesting of a stylistic matchup as it is, I feel like I might just need to watch this fight to gain information on both fighters going forward.
Yep, and nothing wrong with that. Yeah, no really interest for me one way or another. I'm going to look and see what the other books open up some lines out. But yeah, that was a good Jay Leno analogy, says Space, and I could see it, man.
Yeah, man, it's a hell of a fight, a hell of a way to start this pay-per-view card with 2 fantastic prospects like Rosas and C-Rod.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Moving on, we have Kevin Holland going against Santiago Ponzinibbio. We have the over-under set at 2.5 rounds. The over 2.5 minus 110. The under 2.5 minus 120. The fight goes to decision plus 110. The fight doesn't go to decision minus 140. Yeah, really tricky one here. Just because Kevin Holland, nobody's really finishing him outside of the corner stoppage, his last fight out against Stephen Thompson. Other than that, he's never been knocked out. Next level chin. And Ponzinibbio, typically a guy that's been very, very durable, hard to knock out. The durability did not look great in his last fight against Morono. But yeah, one that I'm not too sure on here. And it is a Kevin Holland fight, so I always have to be very wary betting a Kevin Holland fight. But anything sticking out here, Weezy?
What's sticking out is how well this is priced. You look at it according to the benchmarks here, right? Fight doesn't go overpriced 4.62% according to the benchmark. Fight goes overpriced by 2.31%. So it's almost like that VIG, which is at about 7% right here, which is a little bit wide, is almost evenly distributed between both lines. And then when you look at the benchmarks for the fighters here, we got 27 fight sample size. So that's where we're looking for that data to push us in one direction or another. And we're getting just a little bit better of a deal here on violence than we are on non-violence. So the data likes the violence betting lines just a little bit more because this sample size of 27 fights here, if we can get a bargain between that number and this number, between this number and this number, between this number and this number, those are the ones I feel like that are the most valuable comparisons here. But they're all just not enough to and I don't have a stylistic read one way or another because Holland is next level durable, as is Ponzinibbio, but Holland also just does some really dumb shit. And Ponzinibbio is getting older, and his chin is really starting to crack. So I don't feel like I have a good stylistic read on it, and the data is telling me that the lines are priced perfectly, so it feels like a good stay away. Are you muted?
You got me. You got me. Yeah, I was just saying, staying away from Kevin Holland fights is something I like to do nowadays. It's just hard to trust the guy one way or another. So, yeah, we can move on to a very interesting one from a time prop perspective. We have Rob Font going against Adrian Yanez. We have the over-under set at 2.5 rounds. We have the over 2.5 minus 125. The under 2.5 rounds minus 105. The fight goes to decision plus 100. Fight doesn't go decision is minus 130. And it feels a lot like the last fight where it's like, I don't know. I feel like both these guys are super durable. Rob Font is not finishing Adrian Yanez. Like Yanez scorecards, no action right now on BetOnline is minus 400. That tells you everything you need to know. The question, I guess, comes down to, is Rob Font's chin completely gone or not? Rob Font, prior to the Aldo fight, had never been dropped. In his last 2 fights, he's been dropped. It says 5 times, but I could have swore Cheeto got him a couple more than that. So I'm just kind of worried about the durability of Rob Font, but he is getting dropped, but he is still able to recover. I'd lean towards like an over here, but it's probably like one of those greasy overs where Rob Font probably gets knocked down or he wobbles at least once. But yeah, I kind of have some interest in the over, but it's not something I'm in love with. Weezy, what's sticking out to you on this one?
Yeah, so the data is like screaming bet the unders here, right? Because we could see that Font, when he's scheduled for 3 rounds, his fights are finishing inside the distance 7 of 11 times. And for Giannis, it's 4 of 5. Add that together, that's 11 of 16 or 68.75%, right? Okay, so that's a big break because we're only paying 54% here on the line. So you compare that to that, that's a 14.2% savings. These guys are finishing inside the distance at almost a 20% rate, better than what the division does, which is 49%. But here's the problem. Adrian Yanez's 4 finishes here come against street urchins. Like guys that showed up for a ham sandwich and $50 to get a fight. Like Tony Kelly, Gustavo Lopez, the kid from the Northeast,
Victor Rodriguez,
Randy Costa, and then who's the other bum?
I think it was like Victor Rodriguez.
Victor Rodriguez, who just got knocked out. Well, didn't he just lose to get knocked out by the guy that twerks, Jordan Levitt, or was that Victor Martinez?
That was a different Rodriguez or whatever.
There was a Rodriguez, and then there's a Martinez. They're both named Victor. Either way, Rob Font has never been knocked out. Marlon Vera couldn't finish him in 5 rounds. Now, he probably could have. Aldo almost finished him, but prior to that, there were 12 UFC fights where this guy was never even knocked down once. So this power that Yanez has been showing against guys that aren't UFC quality. And Rob Font is clearly not just UFC quality. He's a winning fighter at this level, fighting a very good level of competition. When you look at the strength of schedule stats that I keep bringing, check this out.
Night and day.
Right? A 1.56 ratio. So the average guy that Font fights has 8.14 wins and 5.21 losses. The average guy that Yanez fights has 2.2 wins and 3 losses. And I wonder who the wins are against. Who are the 11 wins that Victor Rodriguez got? And I think
it was probably Davey Grant.
Like Randy Costa beat a couple of street urchins. Davey Grant, he got a win over Davey Grant. And Davey Grant actually has some UFC wins, but outside of that, he's beating bums. So it's a big step up in competition for Adrian Yanez. And Yanez is next level durable. And let's face it, even though Rob Font has been getting his chin cracked, I'm not ready to put Adrian Yanez in the same breath with the former featherweight champion of the world in Jose Aldo, and then one of the best bantamweights in the history of the division in Marlon Vera just yet, because he beat Tony Kelly. Okay. So even though the data is definitely telling us that the unders are the way to go, stylistically, I like the overs because I feel like I can count on the durability of Font. I can count on the durability of Yanez. And because it's such a step up in competition, I'm looking at Rob Font by decision at plus 275 on DraftKings Sportsbook.
Oh, yeah. Plus 275 is a lot better than Bet Online. Bet Online only has it at plus 235.
Yeah, it's a much better line there on DraftKings, and it makes sense because if you look at Font's distance striking numbers here, Brady, 7.54 landed per minute, only 4.43 absorbed. You know, Adrian Yanez, he outlands his opponent 6.45 to 5.71, but he's got a lot more power. He's knocking down people down on 2% of the distance strikes that he lands, while it's only 0.6% for Rob Font. But Rob Font throws 6 more distance strike attempts per minute than his opponents do. He's got a really nice long jab that sets up everything else that he does. So, yeah, I think he can win minutes on the feet here. I think we can count on both of these guys' durability. So even though the prop template doesn't like it, you know, the data's definitely not screaming to bet the overs. I don't think the over 2.5 at minus 125 is a bad look at all.
Yep. Same here. I think it's solid. Could be sweaty at times, but I think it's solid. All right. 2 more fights. We got the co-main event. We have Gilbert Burns going against Jorge Masvidal. We have the over-under set at 2.5 rounds. Looks like money's coming on this under. It's now minus 137 on the under 2.5. The over 2.5 is now plus 107. The fight goes to decision plus 125. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 155. Yeah, not one I really want much to do with. If anything, honestly, I'd actually lean the over. Like Jorge Masvidal's submission defense is elite, hasn't been submitted in almost 15 years. Obviously, both guys have some power. Yeah, I would lean the overs here, but it's not something I'm extremely passionate about. WEEZY, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, let's lean the overs here, Brady. Over 2.5 at plus 107 is a trifecta bet.
Okay.
About 22% in combined savings, 6.5% in savings. When we compare the 54.82% over 2.5 rate for the division to only 48% for the line. And we've got a 32 fight sample size, Brady, between Masvidal and Burns. And that's a 32 fight sample size that were scheduled for 3 rounds. So we've stripped out all the 5-round fights because they don't mean shit here. And you know why? We don't want to be putting fights into our data sample when they don't mean dick. So we stripped them out, Brady, because we're doing the best analytical work that we can do here with this template, you know, and we want to get the best looks we possibly can. Well, guess what? 19 of 32, 59.38% of their fights have went over 2.5 rounds. 56% have went to decision. We're only paying 44% for the fight goes to decision, and only 48% for the over 2.5. So, both of those bets, 107 and 125, the prop template is blessing both of them, showing a lot of value. And like you said, stylistically, you know, both of these guys have power on the feet, but they're really not getting knocked out a whole lot. And Jorge Masvidal's submission defense is elite. And we don't have to worry about Masvidal submitting Gilbert Burns, a multi-time black belt level, you know, world champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So, yeah, the data likes the overs here.
Yep, and I like it as well. That is one I'm going to be definitely considering for sure. My read lines up, trifecta lines up. I like it.
Absolutely. Me too, man. I'm writing that one down for sure.
Same here. All right. Last fight here. We have the main event. Israel Adesanya going against Alex Pereira. We have the over-under set at 4.5 rounds. The over 4.5 plus 100. The under 4.5 minus 130. The fight goes to decision, plus 125. The fight doesn't go to decision is minus 155. Last time these guys fought, I got the fight doesn't go at plus 115 around there. And I'm not getting that same line. But I do lean violence in this one. I personally think that Pereira eventually touches the chin of Adesanya in this one. But I think instead of laying the minus 155, I might just be touching that Pereira money line at plus money. But is there anything sticking out here on this one, WEEZY?
Well, I'm tickled pink, Brady, to be able to debut the 5-round prop template here, which I've spent a lot of time on the week off working on now. And what we've done with this 5-round prop template is add the new bets in. So, you know, on the 3-round prop template here for Burns Masvidal, we've only got, you know, 5 violence bets, 2 fight doesn't starts, 2 unders, and then the fight doesn't go. And then we've got the fight goes over 2.5, over 1.5, fight starts, right? But now here We've got under 4.5, under 3.5, under 2.5, under 1.5. Fight doesn't start around 5, 4, 3, 2, and the fight doesn't go to decision. So we've got 9 violence betting lines here posted, and we've got 9 non-violence betting lines. And we've got the exact analytics for both fighters only in 5-round fights. And we've got the benchmarks for only 5-round fights. So now we can only take the relevant fights, which are the 5-round fights, weigh them against each other to determine whether we're getting an edge here, right?
Nice.
But we're not getting an edge, are we? Right? The violence betting lines are definitely shaded to be cheaper, okay? But we can see that Israel Adesanya has went under 3.5 rounds in fights that were scheduled for 5 rounds 2 times out of 9. And for Pereira, it's 0 of 1. So, like, when you compare that all together, it's only 20% of their combined fights have went under 3.5 rounds, but we're paying 47.62%. So right now, we're finding some value here. While we're overpaying based according to these benchmarks, we're definitely finding some good value in that 100% of their fights, all 10 of them have started round 2. 80% of their fights have started round 4 and even started round 5. So we can get a fight starts round 5 at minus 135 here, which is a 15% overpayment when we compare it to the 42% fight starts round 5 for 185-pound fights that were scheduled for 5 rounds. But we can also see that 8 of their 10 combined fights have went into round 5, which is a big break of 22.55%. So yeah, I'm leaning for some of these overs here, but stylistically, man, if Pereira just goes out there and pressures, I think he's going to find a knockout at some point or walk into something from Adesanya that catches him off guard. So I'm kind of leaning for the unders stylistically. The data is pointing me to the overs, so I'm probably just staying away from this one. And sometimes, you know, the fights, it's that trap that we tend to think the fight's going to play out like it did the first time, but it just doesn't happen that often, right? We know that fights, you know, styles make fights, and good fighters make adjustments. So we're going to see Pereira make adjustments in this fight. He might pressure more. He might even initiate some wrestling. And he might just try to land that left hook a little bit more than he did the first time, throw a lot more leg kicks, and we might see Israel go to the wrestling more. We might see him look to counter more. I mean, there are so many adjustments that both fighters could make that can make this fight turn out differently than it did the first time. So I've got nothing sticking out here. What do you think?
Nothing. I mean, like I said, last time I had the fight doesn't go at plus money, and I'm definitely not getting that. And even that was a sweat. Like, I thought the fight was for sure going the distance, and all of a sudden Pereira came out in the 5th round and decided to try to take Izzy's head off, and he did. I wonder if he's going to go out there and attack this fight like he did in that 5th round, like instantly pressure Izzy like he did in the 5th round. If he does that, it could even be an early finish. So I don't know. Yeah. I mean, it's one I'm going to stay away from as well. But I guess I lean violence, but I don't like the chalk on it. We did it, WEEZY, went through some spots. Do you want to highlight the spots that stuck out? I'll do the same, and then we can come out with a PP for this card.
Yeah, so I like that Amari Hughes under 2.5 rounds at minus 105, even though the data hates it.
Yes.
You know, I do like the fight goes to decision at plus 160 for Sherman versus Garcia. I think that's just a play to say, look, if this fight finishes, if I'm on the violence for Sherman versus Garcia, I'm betting like an under 1.5, right? Because I think if it goes over 1.5, we're going to see a lot of the sting taken out of Garcia's punches, and we're going to see Sherman have more and more success with the wrestling. And Steve Garcia has shown decent submission defense thus far, especially in the Pena fight. So, I kind of like that plus 160, but that's definitely not a parlay piece. I like the Calvillo Godinez plus 250 for the under 2.5. Might not get to it. I already bet the Williams Sherman plus 205 for the under 1.5. I bet that for 1 unit in between fights, Brady.
Nice.
And then I like the Burns Masvidal plus 107 for the over 2.5. And then also for a parlay piece, the over 2.5 for Gastelum Curtis.
Yep, I'm gonna take a hard look at that Burns Masvidal over 2.5 at plus 107. I'm looking at some type of violence in the Sherman Williams. Don't know if it's going to be the under 1.5, but I will be on some type of violence there. Over 2.5 in the Curtis Gastelum as a parlay piece as well. Don't mind the Meerschaert Pifer fight doesn't go minus 325 as a parlay piece as well.
Yeah.
And then that under 2.5 in the Amari Sam Hughes fight is my only bet of the card thus far. But other than that, those are my favorite spots that really stuck out. But I think we talked about a lot of them on this card.
Yeah, man. I could see parlaying that Gastelum Curtis minus 220 for the over 2.5. And I could see parlaying that with maybe something like an over 1.5 for Adesanya versus Pereira, right? That could be interesting at minus 400 because 100% of Adesanya and Pereira's combined UFC fights that have been scheduled for 5 rounds have went over 1.5 rounds. You know, so if
it would come out to like minus 130 for those two, the overs in both.
That's not terrible. You know, but if we wanted to be gutsy daredevils, you know, we could do something like an Amari Hughes under 2.5 at minus 105 and parlay that shit with Gastelum Curtis to get a nice fat plus money number. And we've got 2 great stylistic matchups that the data doesn't necessarily like, but stylistic, you know, matchups are just as important as the data. And if we put those 2 together, what would we get?
Those 2 together would be plus 184. So a little bit more risky, but you know, I like both those spots.
Yeah. And I think we both agree on both of those spots, right?
Yep.
Plus what?
184.
What do you think?
I like it. Like I said, it's a little bit riskier, but I like both spots to cash.
And like we're basically just telling my prop template to fuck off, right? If we do that, and you know, sometimes we got to do that, man. Something, you know, like I said, the data is a guide, it's a measuring stick, but then we've got to make our reads based off of that. And you know, I don't think it's ridiculous to pay minus 105 for somebody in Amari for an under 2.5 when she's never even been out of the first round in her pro career.
Yeah, exactly. Never even seen it over 1.5, let alone 2.5. So. Yep, I like it for sure. All right, WEEZY, we did it. Went through all 13 fights. Now all that's left is letting the people know where they can find you and your plans throughout the rest of the week for some content.
Yeah, check me out tomorrow night, 10 o'clock Central Time on Uncle WEEZY's YouTube channel. We're going to do just the tip with Uncle WEEZY. I'm going to give you just the tip of the stats for all 13 of these fights, give you my track bets, finish with Uncle WEEZY's ass shaving of the week. Wednesday, Brady and I, Monk and Gordo do the DFS show on Pub Sports Radio, and I'll be looking to do an Ask WEEZY at 10 o'clock Wednesday night here on my channel, and also do a greasy 4-leg parlay on my channel as well. And I'm looking to create a new template, which is going to bring analytics division by division so that we can do some prize picks content, Brady. So I'm going to be looking into that as well, looking to create a template that will do some, it'll give us an edge, you know, using the data points that we have to find some spots for over-unders, for fantasy points, for significant strikes, takedowns, minutes in a fight. Some really interesting stuff coming forward here as a result of all the work that I did over the month off that we had in late December and early January to rebuild my database of statistics. That's bringing you such content as this probability and with this new 5-round prop template that we're putting together here.
Yes, sir. It was fun debuting that on the show. I liked it a lot, but yeah, probably won't have a bet on it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what it looks like going forward with some of these other 5-round fights for sure. All right. Yeah, guys, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. You can check me out on Twitter, DFS_numbers, Instagram, DFS by the numbers, YouTube, DFS by the numbers. I just posted my full card breakdown and prediction video. I did a main event breakdown as well. And then I'll be back Friday and Saturday as well for some live streams. So be sure to check that out. Best of luck for UFC 287. Should be a fun card from a fan perspective. And yeah, I think we've talked about some good spots on the card as well from a betting perspective also. So that's about it, guys. Best of luck, and we'll talk to you soon. See you.